Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Aubrey Reeves, CEO of Business and Arts. Before we begin, I'd first like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm a settler speaking to you from Toronto. I have the honor to be a guest on the traditional lands and waters of the Petun and Wendat people and the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee confederacies, most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River, as well as many other Indigenous nations, some of whose names are no longer remembered. But by saying the names of its original keepers, we remember that this territory continues to be subject to the dish with one spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Three Fire Confederacy of the Anishinaabe to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Particularly as we near the end of National Indigenous History Month, we acknowledge all who came before us and have traveled the lands and waters of this territory. We're grateful to have the opportunity to work, to live, and to meet on these lands. Today's webinar will be a conversation looking at trends in sponsorship, spotlighting some success stories from the cultural sector, and showcasing how meaningful partnerships can have exceptional results and create lasting impacts on audiences and communities. While we often think of major corporations when one thinks of sponsorship, small and medium-sized businesses also play an important role in arts sponsorship in Canada. In 2023, Business and Arts ArtsFest program saw organizations secure over $800,000 in private sector sponsorship, with the majority of these partnerships secured with local small and medium-sized businesses. These sponsorships benefit arts organizations and business partners alike, while strengthening programs and engaging communities. If you're unfamiliar with ArtsFest, it is Business and Arts' signature free national training and mentorship program that is open to small and medium-sized arts organizations wishing to improve their fund development skills. As you'll see, one of our panelists today participated in ArtsFest BC last year, and another of our panelists is an ArtsFest mentor. Only the presenters and moderators will have our microphones on today, so please submit your questions in the Q&A box and vote for the ones you think are most relevant. In addition to ASL interpretation, auto-generated English and French captions can also be turned on for this webinar in your control panel. And finally, before I introduce today's moderator, I would like to extend our thanks to Power Corporation, presenting partner of the Business and Arts Speaker Series. Moderating today's session will be Alicia Rose, Associate Vice President, Social Impact, Sustainability, and Corporate Citizenship at TD Bank Group. It's a real pleasure to have Alicia join us, as she's also an alumnus of Business and Arts, working with us from 2012 to 2015, including on the ArtsFest program. So in addition to BA, she has worked with organizations such as Pathways to Education and the Harbourfront Centre. She worked for over 15 years in the social sector in roles that have ranged from program manager to executive director and everything in between. Upon joining TD, Alicia has led the Canadian Employee Giving Campaign, as well as the TD Ready Challenge, which is TD's North American Innovation Fund, providing $10 million in grants to charitable organizations. Most recently, Alicia has moved into an expanded role of Associate Vice President, Social Impact in Canada. In this role, she oversees the colleague engagement and philanthropy portfolios for the TD Ready commitment, including Friends of the Environment Foundation. And she continues to be involved in the social sector and serves on boards such as Jayu and the Soul Pepper Theatre Company. So welcome, Alicia, and thank you for being here. I'm happy to hand things over to you.
Thanks so much, Aubrey. I really appreciate that lovely introduction. And it's nice to be back in Business and Arts land. I haven't been here for a while. I am joining you from a rainy Toronto today, and I am really excited to moderate today's discussion. I think we're going to have a very meaty discussion, so I'm going to jump right in and introduce our speakers for today. And I'm going to take the time to read through their bios because I think we should give people their flowers. So let's start off with Carly McFadden. Carly served as the executive and artistic director at Folk on the Rocks from 2016 to 2024. This year, she has transitioned into the role of artistic director. She is also this year's recipient of the Arnold Edinburgh Award, congratulations, given to a young changemaker who has made an outstanding contribution to the arts sector. The award will be presented in the fall by Business and Arts. With a passion for curating innovative festival lineups, she brings a wealth of artistic accolades to her role, having cultivated unforgettable events that celebrate both established and emerging talents. Carly's commitment to artistic excellence and inclusivity continues to shape the festival's legacy, cementing her position as a driving force in the cultural landscape. Her adeptness to forging sponsorships, community partnerships, and strategic business ventures has further solidified Folk on the Rocks' position as a cornerstone of the cultural community, ensuring its continued growth and impact. Welcome, Carly. Looking forward to chatting. I'd also like to introduce our second panelist today, which is Jay Hébert. Jay is the co-founder and president of Elevent. Jay has been active in communications and marketing for over 20 years. As a sponsorship specialist, he worked for a long time in the agency world, where he was able to put his advanced knowledge of marketing and sponsorship to good use. Jay also served as director of sponsorships at some other bank, BMO Financial Group. His work has also been recognized twice by the Sponsorship Council of Canada. He's currently the head of consulting services at Elevent, the only agency in Quebec that offers strategic consulting, research, and evaluation services in the sponsorship sector, and works with more than 150 clients in Canada, United States, and Europe. Welcome, Jay. And finally, last but certainly not least, is Derek Chan. Derek grew up in colonial Hong Kong, lived in Norway, and now lives and works on the unceded, stolen, and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, colonially known as Vancouver. A playwright, director, performer, translator, and producer, Derek is the managing artistic director of Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre. Before that, he was a co-artistic director of Rice and Beans Theatre from 2010 to 2021. Derek has been a National Arts Centre English Theatre Artist in Residence with Yellow Objects, a new installation exhibition in support of the ongoing pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, which won an Innovation Award at the Jessies. Congrats. His play Chicken Girl won the Sydney Risk Award for Outstanding Original Play by an Emerging Playwright. His solo show, Happy Valley, was selected for the Spotlight Canada pitch sessions at the Edinburgh Fringe. Woo, that's a mouthful. We've got some talent here. So let's jump right in and let's just get started. And Jay, I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. So you founded a sponsorship agency, works with 150 clients or more worldwide. What excites you about sponsors so much that it actually inspired you to launch your own business dedicated to it?
Well, thanks for asking. I guess the best answer to that is I've done many things in the marketing world, worked in advertising, worked in events planning, promotion, and I think that sponsorship is, for me, the most interesting part of marketing, simply because of the fact that everybody basically wins if it's done correctly. So technically, the participants or beneficiaries of the event, of the art property will benefit from it. The sponsee will benefit from it, and obviously the sponsor will benefit from it because there are obviously objectives behind that. So let's call it, maybe it's a little bit more noble than just simple advertising, I guess.
I love that. I love this concept of everybody wins. And so few times in life do we see that. Derek and Carly, is that something that resonates with the both of you? Is that what has you interested in sponsorship, or is there anything else that drives you?
Yeah, that is one of the main goals, I suppose, that we're looking at when it comes to partnerships, sponsorships. Looks like Carly has some connection issues and dropped out for 2 seconds. But yeah, a lot of that, because we are a pretty small organization, all things considered, and it is really important for us to a um find partners and sponsors that can help with our operations, and also partners and sponsors who are interested in the art and in the kind of art that we're facilitating and making, but also on the other side, from a point of view as an artistic director and also to a certain extent as an artist creator as well, it in a very strange way it does brings a level of almost attraction. I don't want to say legitimacy because I don't think that's the right word at the what I'm saying, but to the audience go, oh wow, this project does have
Mm.
these sponsors, so it's there's a level of trustworthiness almost. Whether it's a good way to look at it, it's in line with my experience with having sponsors on specific projects, and it also keeps us accountable as well.
Love that piece around accountability. I think that's an interesting perspective around the validation that it might bring, whether that should or shouldn't be. I think we could have a whole conversation around that. I do want to hold space for Carly. I'd love to hear your perspectives about what motivates you around sponsorship.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I'm sorry if I'm repeating anything that anyone said. My internet dropped for a moment there, which is one of the joys of working and living in the north. I'm tethered to my phone now, so it shouldn't happen again.
No worries.
One of the things, thanks. One of the things that motivates me or excites me about working with sponsors is probably sometimes the unique opportunities we get to build in. Like for example, right now I'm actually in one of my sponsors' offices using some of their space because our office is a little bit crazy. But this is a partner that we recently partnered with on a live mural project that we wanted to do for the festival this year, and that we've been doing for the past couple of years, but couldn't do from a previous funder. So we came to this sponsor, which is Western Arctic Moving Pictures, a nonprofit film organization here in town. And asked if they might be interested in partnering with us on this so we could keep the art going. And they fill a lot of those gaps that we can't get from funders or that we can't put the cost on our ticket holders. And so we find ways where it serves the need of us in terms of creating and promoting our artists while being able to also, you know, help pump those folks up or get those spaces that they're looking for as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that, Carly. I'd love to flip to Derek for a second and just really dig into a little bit more about Arts Fest. So Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre was selected to participate in Arts Fest regional program last year. And so that gave your team access to training resources and some matching funds. And it was basically an incentive to pursue sponsorships. So how did this program nurture and support your organization's ability to grow your sponsorship skills?
Thank you. And ArtsFest has helped our organization a lot, to be honest, absolute honest. Partly because, again, we're a small organization, and so a couple years ago we brought on a emerging development coordinator whose our intention is for them to take the position and then with existing knowledge, but then keep learning and growing into a full development coordinator or manager type position. And so most of the session was attended by our coordinator, and we found that a lot of those seminars specifically geared towards just looking at my notes on my second screen. And I found that a lot of the seminars and especially relevant to smaller organizations have been really helpful, focusing on how to grow even with limited resources, and hearing advice and insight from experienced folks in this area. And for me as well, I come from a small, mid-sized independent theater world where sponsorship fundraising is really not that big of a part of a lot of our operations. And luckily with VACT, we did have an established donor base that was tirelessly set up by my predecessor and mentor, years ago. And another funny anecdote is that when I was an intern here at VACT back in 2017 or something, I believe we were also part of Arts Fest, and I also attended a few of those things, and so kept a lot of those knowledge. Um, yeah, so it is to recap, it is those specific focus on smaller organizations, how to navigate limited resources. That's been extremely helpful to us.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. So from what I'm hearing, there's like the financial benefit, the matching funds component, but it also sounds like it's driving some capacity and some development and some capacity within your organization, which is not easy to come by. So thanks for sharing that. I'm actually interested, Carly, from your perspective. So rumor has it that you have grown folk on the rocks quite significantly in forging 75 community partnerships and sponsorships under your leadership. Tell us your secrets. We want to know, how did you build those partnerships? If you want to highlight one, that'd be great.
Some of that is maybe rumor a little bit, or just more like formalizing some of those partnerships. The festival has been around. We're going into our 44th year next month, will be our 44th festival. We're a small community. We get a lot of support from a lot of different places. And when I came in, a lot of that was already happening. It just maybe wasn't, recorded or put pen to paper, or the visibility in exchange for services wasn't being shown as much as it could have been. So yes, there are probably, I would say, about 25-ish new sponsors since I started in 2016, but a lot of that was already there. But a lot of that has been kind of, spending time talking to each of those folks and asking what the value of what they're giving is and how we can support them back, and making sure that it feels fair and that everyone feels seen, that it's a good exchange between us and those businesses. I feel like I'm forgetting the second part of the question, or sorry, what am I most proud of, or sort of what has grown out of those things? We
Sure,
built, yeah. Or you can repeat if I've got it wrong.
No, go for it. We're casual around here.
Great. Yeah, so we have grown out a lot of those partnerships by being able to take a look at sort of what was being provided and where we can improve on both ends. We need more of this or more of that, and same with our partners and us. Probably what I'm most proud of really is our title sponsor as of this year, which is Lawson Lundell. They're a law firm from operating all across mostly Western Canada. But they had been a partner of ours for a number of years. They came on in 2016 when I started. That was a relationship I worked really, really hard on cultivating. And when we needed a new title sponsor at the end of last year's festival, it was actually very easy to go to them and say, this is what we're looking for. Are you interested? And they've basically, I guess, almost quadrupled their support in this last year as our title sponsor. And that feels really good. It also feels like a natural fit. Like we really grew together, and this felt like the next thing. So yeah, I'm quite proud of that, and it's feeling good so far. But the festival's not over, so let's see what happens. Just kidding. It feels good.
No, thanks for that perspective, and thank you for raising kind of the importance of the cultivation and the stewardship component of that sponsorship relationship, because it does sound, particularly with your title sponsor, like that's the right fit. And that doesn't come by accident. So congratulations on that. And thanks for sharing a little bit more of that story. As we think about those specific examples, I would be remiss, Derek, if I didn't bring up that TD has been a supporter of your organization through TD Ready Commitment and our corporate citizenship platform. And we know each corporation and each arts organization is different. But can you share what steps you took to secure this sponsorship, and how did the aims and goals of your arts org fit into the strategic goals of TD Ready Commitment?
Yeah, of course. We have been very lucky to establish this relationship with TD Ready Commitment. It's a new relationship, and our development coordinator and our staff worked really hard to put together an application. And honestly, luckily, there's a lot of ideals and vision that we share between what TD Commitment is excited to support and what kind of artists and work that we are excited to support, and what kind of work that we want to share with our audiences. Um, and specifically, TD Commitment is going to sponsor our new play development program, and also a showcase with a pretty significant contribution that, of course, we're extremely grateful for. But I'm just thinking about this, I'm so jazzed, so excited right now. And how it worked was honestly a lot of research from our development coordinator's part. They did a lot of work to not just TD, but also with other sponsorship opportunities, but especially with TD, did a lot of work in really researching what the programs are about, who are already partners with TD, and then also VACT has been a client with TD, like the bank, for a long time. So there's also this another existing relationship going on, in our head anyway, and more of a business relationship, but still it does mean a lot that, as a corporation, like, they, been good to us on that side of things. So yeah, and then also our development coordinator uh took quite a lot of advice also from one of our board members who is in the fundraising sector, to strategize and really to understand, oh, is this the kind of engagement that can benefit from, even before the application, is this the kind of engagement that can benefit from having some kind of one-on-one relationship, or is it not? Is it the kind of process where we apply, with the genuine excitement and passion for our projects and our mandate and our goals, and hopefully the sponsors share that same kind of ideals with us. um, yeah, so that's kind of how that happened.
And I will say, so in prep for this conversation, I did read over that application. And it's really lovely when the work and the research shines through in an application. So kudos to your team, because the application really clearly aligned to the goals that TD Ready Commitment had put out publicly. And I think that speaks to, the depth of effort that your team went through in order to get it right and to get the right note there. And that actually makes me kind of switch over to Jay to ask him a question around, okay, so you've worked as an Arts Fest, or volunteered as an Arts Fest mentor, and you have worked with a lot of organizations, and there are small arts organizations that are on the beginning of their sponsorship journey, let's call it. And as Derek mentioned, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and a lot of thought that goes into that. And I'd love to get some of your reflections on some key lessons for arts organizations when considering embarking on their sponsorship journey. And is everyone ready? Should everyone be doing this? Should everyone be doing this now?
We should maybe also begin to disagree altogether. Yeah, well, I think I've been doing mentorship for the past 3 years, I think, with Arts Fest. And, a couple of reasons why. The first is actually the fact that every time I speak about the fact that I work in sponsorship, I think that traditionally in Canada, when you think of sponsorship, we think of sports sponsorship, such as this one. But we keep forgetting actually that, there is professional sports for sure, but there's a world and a universe, a whole universe actually of sponsorship in the arts and culture. And Jeff went really funny is that right behind me, it's actually not a poster of the Canadian, but it's actually a work of art that was actually done by a local artist here, which is basically a copy of the ticket, the last ticket, actually the Canadian ones in '93. So I find it's a nice message to send, right? Basically, instead of just focusing on professional sports, there's a world of opportunity also that awaits in arts, culture, festivals, and everything. has actually been one of the first large financial institutions that really got involved into culture, whereas most financial institutions were in professional sports and still are actually. So, so for one, I've always been really interested to work with smaller artistic organizations to help them grow that part of their activities, because we have to admit it, it's not that easy to do sponsorship if you want to do it properly. Now, I'm not talking about love money, because some companies will fall in love with you and give you money, which is great. But if we are to address at the core what should sponsorship be, it's not necessarily easy, and there are some processes and management reflexes that needs to be developed by an organization. So the first topic that I find that always arises is that actually we speak about sponsorship and how we can improve and sponsorship issues, but it's rarely about sponsorship. It's always about management. It's always about the product itself, the positioning. And I know that often we're shy about talking about, product positioning when we talk about arts and culture, but it is a conversation that we, to a certain extent, we need to have just to be able to understand what the organization is good at and maybe not good at. Which leads me to basically the second part of the topic that we always address when I do mentorship is, the traditional sponsorship proposal will be, X amount of people that are being reached, X amount of thousand of people who attend the event or the festival. But in reality, it's never about impressions. It should be about what are you good at as an organization. Because if your main argument is actually impressions or reach or attendees, you are putting yourself in competition with all the major festivals, all the major professional, sports teams that do drive a lot of impressions that are being broadcast and all. And the goal here, and that's especially true with smaller organizations, is how can you be unique and how can you help a company solve an issue? Does a company need to be seen as more innovative? Can you be credible, and are you competent at being innovative? Are you specialized in some ways of art? Are you specialized in urban arts? Are you so the goal here is actually working with these or small organizations just to help them find what is their unique positioning and avoid falling on the trap of just talking about how many people attended the event, which is not going to be that of an interest for larger organizations. So I'd say those are the two main topics that we do talk a lot every time I do mentorship sessions.
Yeah, I love that. And I really appreciate this idea of figuring out your value proposition as it stands with that particular sponsor, as opposed to, we've reached X amount of people, because to your point, there will always be another institution that will have a larger reach or a broader scope. But I know at TD, we've worked really hard to shift our reporting from just metric-based to lives touched, lives enhanced, lives changed, because we know that the numbers aren't always an indicator of success. And so I think what we can collectively do to shift that narrative is helpful for the sector on a whole. I'm wondering, through all of you, as Jay was really, mentioning this idea of your value proposition, is there something unique about each of your organizations that you offer a partner? And what advice would you give to arts organizations that are looking to identify that thing? And maybe, Carly, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of going against a little bit maybe what was just said, but for us, we are quite lucky that we're kind of a big fish in a small pond, which does help us in terms of attracting partnerships, especially with large organizations from outside of Yellowknife, like TD, who is one of our partners, and Lawson Lundell, those sorts of things, Rio Tinto Diavik. But anyway, I would say that that's a big attraction for us, but that also works for small businesses too. They know that we have a lot of people coming in from outside the territory, or just that we are a place where a lot of people are going to be gathering over the weekend. So if they can have an activation space or, something unique where people can engage, that is a space where they will maybe attract folks that they haven't connected with previously. So while that is sort of going against creating unique opportunities for us, that does work really well in terms of being able to say, like, we are the largest festival in the territory, and so we can also offer maybe more services than other advertising avenues might not be able to.
Yeah, I think we should caveat that to say, if you know that you can stand in being the unique, largest, broadest reach, then yes, let's sing that from the mountaintop. But so thanks for sharing that. Derek, from your perspective.
Yes, from VACT's perspective, we are obviously a culturally mandated arts organization, so that that already puts us in a pretty specific um, niche, I suppose. And but beyond that, since I took over the company in 2022, we have started to put even more focus on working with and developing emerging artists and putting early mid-career artists and arts professionals in leadership positions, so that they can grow into those positions either within the company or in the local and provincial and national community, wherever. And essentially, I've said a few times to emerging artists that we work with that I would like VACT, our organization, to be a place that can help launch. I'd be happier to see them go on to make bigger, brighter things than thinking that VACT is kind of the be all and end all of Asian theater, Asian performing arts. So I think that also puts us into a very specific position in terms of how we work with the community around us, and the way we carry out these development and mentorship opportunities. All of them are participant focused, and we focus on what they need, and with consultation and with research, and quite often at low to no cost. A lot of these programs. So that demonstrated also a need for sponsorship, because somebody has to pay for it. In the most basic terms. But also it is very important for us to not make young artists or practicing artists to pay money to advance their career. That doesn't feel right. Um, so a lot of this came from when I was coming up, learning the ropes. I've had mentors and partners helping me, and a lot of our work at VACT here is to make sure that happens with the next generations. And a lot of that also reminds me of, in I guess in art making or in theater making, we talk about specificity, and actually the more specific we get with the intention, it can quite often lead to a even more universal appeal or resonance or understanding, even for folks who are not directly working in the sector or in the niche that we exist in.
Thanks for that, Derek. A couple of things are coming to mind as I'm listening to you all speak. And I think, it's great for this audience to understand how you think about your organizations and where you see your impact. And that's where you're really looking to deep dive in terms of telling that story with your partners and potential sponsors. I will just offer from my seat as well. One of the things that I think is interesting about the idea of value propositions is, as a bank, we are consistently evolving and shifting and changing. And so sometimes your value proposition to us might change. So we might at some point be looking at, we really want to deep dive with newcomers. And then at another point, we're really looking to deep dive in rural areas of Canada. And so keeping a pulse on where your partners are going as well can be really helpful in those partnerships as well. I want to talk just a little bit about broader trends in corporate sponsorships. So, Jay, I'm coming over to you because I suspect you'll have some thoughts around this. But there has been media coverage lately about corporate sponsorship trends shifting away from some high-profile festivals and events. And sometimes that's due to a misalignment of values. So, from your agency perspective, do you see that, and what do you see as current trends in the sector?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that as a general perspective, what we've been seeing for the past few years, that budget seems to be relatively stable in Canada. I know some people, and I saw a question actually, or that was actually raised about the fact that maybe during COVID there was some budgets that were actually lost. It hasn't been the case, based on our observation, but there was a lot of shifts in terms of how money was spent. And so professional sport, as everybody will be extremely surprised on this panel, professional sport has always had the upper hand in terms of budget. It's less the case than in the United States. However, it's still gravitating around between 60 and 70% of the overall spendings in sponsorship in Canada that's actually dedicated towards professional sports. Now, what changed a lot is professional sport in itself is a whole lot more fragmented now, especially with the rise of, let's say, women's sports, which we'll all agree is long overdue. However, with budget stable and with the rise of new leagues such as the PWHL for women's hockey, Northern League for soccer, and WNBA that's coming, and so on and so forth, well, this is actually fragmenting that portion of the spendings. So larger festivals for some have been struggling to be able to maintain actually their relationship with larger sponsor. I think there's many reasons for that. I think that mainly large festivals now are more and more bought for convenience perspective. It's a large event, draws a lot of attention, draws a lot of impressions, and it's also easy to simply invest, and the organization will often have internal resources to activate. So there's a lot of conveniences to deal with large festivals, but to the point where there's sometimes a misalignment in terms of value. That's also true because small events or smaller arts or cultural organizations have been drawing a lot of attention because they're more niche, but it's better defined what they have in terms of assets, personality, target market, clientele, so on and so forth. And so you have a better understanding of what you are purchasing in terms of advantages or assets, basically. Even though, the event will maybe sometimes be less in terms of outreach. However, it will be better defined, more easy to understand what you are purchasing. So it goes also along with another trend that we've observed for the past few years, for the fact that there was a strong rise in terms of focus towards corporate social responsibility, which is, I guess, a good thing for you since you work in this area. So, but we haven't seen any planning project with a company for the past 5, 6, 7 years where there hasn't been a corporate social responsibility component to that, or a sustainability component, however we call it. But there's an extremely strong focus about that. And I think that overall, we all know that as consumers or as people, it's more important for us to understand also which company that we deal with and their values, and are they doing the right thing? Are they responsible? And so we have a national study that we conduct every year for which we ask, to what extent are you as a Canadian aware or understand actually what is social responsibility or corporate social responsibility. And this number's been growing slowly but surely every year. And there's about 60% of Canadians that now say that are relatively familiar with the notion or very familiar with it. But what changed a lot is that, when we started doing that study about 6 years ago, is that we saw that there was about maybe 25% of Canadians that were actually acting against companies that they would judge not being responsible. And now the latest study that we did, which was done towards with 4,000 respondents in Canada, it's now at 45% of the latest figures that we have from this year. And so depending on the study that you look, I think that we can all agree for the fact that as consumers and people, it's more and more important for us. And it's important to understand the values of companies that we purchase services or products from. And I think the companies are very lucid about that notion. And it's important also to be able to showcase their values. And so what we're seeing a lot now is that there's still traditional marketing sponsorship being bought, However, the activation itself lends itself more and more to CSR activities. And so they'll purchase, let's say, a professional hockey team. However, well, they'll do a merger with, let's say, an orchestra. And the activation will be to bring an orchestra that they support actually to do, let's say, the opening ceremony for a game. Or, you know, it could be a health cause that they support, or it could be so many topics. I think that we can be very creative about it, but that kind of merger of activities now is more and more common, and more common actually than we would say.
I want to pick up on something that you said earlier. First of all, I would like a copy of that study, please, and thank you.
Well,
but I would also, I want to pick up on something you said earlier. So from your corporate clients' perspective, what are the top things they are looking for when considering a partnership with an arts organization? Is it the niche component, or is it a variety of things depending on who the client is?
It's a very good question. I think that, you know, the basic question is actually, what will this partnership be able to solve for us? So I'll give you an example. We worked with many insurance or banks across Canada. So as an example, we work with Beneva here, which is an insurance company mostly based in Quebec. And their focus is actually mental health, but specifically anxiety. And so for them, arts and humor, because they were associated with, you know, last festival, well, for them, fitted in the realm of anxiety because it was demonstrated that if you're exposed to arts, if you're exposed to laughter, if you're exposed to, you know, this will help you solve, you know, some anxiety issues. And so for them, it's actually a strong focus. And so the question again here is, what can this arts or cultural organization can do in terms of helping us to solve issues or communicate the right messages, or more importantly, make us credible when we want to say that we support arts? And how will this help us be credible in saying? So I guess the best example to put it is, you're probably all familiar with the Bell campaign for mental health. And, you know, where, you know, the campaign itself over the years evolved, but the principle behind it was actually just a communication 101. And whereas, you know, for them, the important thing for Bell, the important thing to communicate was actually the fact that they were supporting mental health. They rarely spoke about the organizations that they were supporting. They rarely spoke about, you know, the different causes within the realm of mental health. For them, the most important thing was actually they had a communication campaign or an advertising campaign that spoke to the fact that they were associated with mental health. And afterwards, all the causes, all the not-for-profits are actually supported through that, benefited in some way or another about, you know, obtaining budgets through that campaign. However, you rarely saw or heard about that. So the role of these not-for-profits was actually just to make Bell credible when they say that they want to support mental health, basically. And so often that's actually what we'll see also happen.
Great, thank you for that example. It's really helpful. I'm going to ask Carly a quick question, and then not quick. I'm going to ask Carly a question and then quickly turn over to some Q&A from those who are joining us virtually. So curious, besides connectivity issues, in your northern and remote environment, what are some of the unique opportunities, but also some challenges that you have faced when cultivating partnerships?
Yeah, well, I think the unique opportunities and the challenges are kind of, or they come together sometimes. For example, our festival site is entirely permanent infrastructure for the most part. Like, our stages are built and exist all year round. We have little offices for our team on site that look like fishing shacks. So rather than most music festivals where, you know, it's entirely built up for the weekend and it's you know, temporary staging and tents and all of this, we have a little bit of that, but for the most part, it's permanent because we have such a supply issue. Like, we don't have that much stuff up here to, you know, build 5 stages over a festival weekend, and sort of all of that additional infrastructure that a festival needs. We have permanent outhouses on the site, those sorts of things. So that kind of comes hand in hand with conversations with sponsors as well. So, you know, if someone's really looking to have something specific, I actually just had a recent request for a video screen to be played on one of our stages with some information about one of our sponsors. And I was like, well, first of all, there's sunlight 24 hours a day during our festival, so screens aren't great. We don't project anything, and there's no LED available here. And to get it up here would be just, out of our budget, unless you'd like to pay for that. But so, then we had to come up with creative solutions to figure out how we could properly advertise the product that they were talking about. It's a raffle that we're working on with Air Canada for some flights to go across. I think it's almost anywhere in North America. Anyway, so we just had to, think creatively about how we're going to do that. So we've got some signage going up around site. Our MCs are really pumping it. So those are the challenges, but it also allows us to really create these special opportunities. We have 3 radio stations in town that have their own lounges that they build on site, and some of them keep them there permanently that people go hang out in other times of the year that look really cool, and they're like little like sun decks that have their logos and stuff on them. So anyway, we work around those things, and it allows for creative space, but it also creates a lot of additional work in terms of finding ways to find sponsorship or find activation space. Anyway, I know we have more to come, so.
Nope, that was great. Great example. At TD, we say a lot, every challenge is an opportunity. And now you've given me a beautiful example that I can leverage in those meetings. So thanks, Carly. Aubrey, I think you're going to be letting us know if there's any questions.
Yeah, we have a number of great questions from the audience, a couple that are very, very similar that I'm going to start with. Basically, how do you get started? People want to know, what's the best way to start the conversation with a potential sponsor? How do you go about finding out what they're looking for in terms of value? And then basically, how do you just start that conversation? Anybody want to?
So maybe I see nods going along. Maybe we'll start with Jay. Any first thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to start conversations. I know that often companies will have software in place just to be able to filter out incoming requests, and it's understandable because most often large companies are lots of the state. They do get a lot of requests. However, the best way to be able to begin conversations is actually to be able to do your homework, because I think in the end, volume is not the key for sponsorship. It's really quality relationships and quality understanding of what the company might be looking for. And again, understanding also what you as an organization are good at and maybe not good at. And I think the most sponsor will solely appreciate the fact that at one point, if you would say, I do not believe we are the right partner for you based on what I've heard, also then we'll have a lot of respect for you to be able to be that candidate in terms of conversations. So, I think key to, open conversations, you really to do your homework and understand, try to understand as best as possible what that company will be looking for.
Great. Okay. Couple other related questions about values. There's been a lot of concern about protests and pushback against sponsors. So there's a couple questions related to that. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts on the divisive nature of nonprofits engaging with corporate sponsorships? And then another person's asking, given widespread concern about the diminishing perception of the role of the arts in our universities and communities, is there any evidence that corporate sponsors may be less interested in working with the arts in the future? Maybe even Alicia, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's something that's on my mind quite a bit, given the state of the world right now. And I think people are rightfully challenging corporations to take a hard look on how we are doing our business to make sure that it aligns with all parts of what we're saying, right? Like we're saying something over here, and does that reflect how our business is being delivered? From the vantage point of an organization, I think it's a really tough position to be in because we know there are only, so many sponsors and funders, particularly at certain levels of giving. And I would, offer that throughout my career, we've always seen these challenges go, they're continual, but they go up and down in waves. And I think staying true, this sounds very corny, but I think staying true to your organization values is key throughout all of that. Like making the decisions as to who you would work with and who you would not work with is key to kind of seeing through some of the pressures that you get externally. And also know that your voices are heard and your audiences are heard. You know, like we have these discussions at the bank quite regularly about how to address the feedback that we're hearing from community. So it does matter, and it's not just going into the wind. That's all I really can offer at this point on that.
Yeah, I wonder, Derek or Carly, from your organization perspectives, do you have any thoughts on this?
Derek, you can go first if you want. I just talked a lot. So.
Sure, Carly. So yeah, and we do think and talk quite a lot within the organization about when it comes to sponsorships and donations, that there has to be a high level of alignment in our philosophies and practices. And yeah, Alicia, what you said is so true. Ultimately, staying true to our mandate and vision is really the most important part. And even Jay, you were mentioning earlier, like if a partnership doesn't feel right, then as an organization, as a leader, then then it is truly listening to what your partners are trying to do, listening to what your staff and organization is trying to do, and your community and your audience. And it's never really a kind of singular decision, or a decision made by a single person at our organization. And also luckily, thanks to our board's uh, firm but gentle nudging, we did develop a sponsorship and partnership receding policy, so that whenever something like this comes up, it hasn't really, truly, it hasn't. But if something like this comes up, then we have something to refer to and look at that document and really assess, like, is this still our values? Are our values lining up? And and a lot of times, another thought that just came to mind again is really back to having those conversations with your community, because ultimately, like from an arts organization, I'm doing this for the community, for the folks that engage with our work and our products, so to speak, right? And so yeah, a lot of times, transparent but maybe potentially difficult conversations, moderated or facilitated in a good way, I think will bring clarity for all sides, especially organization and community.
Thank you. One last question before we wrap it up. And again, this was one that several people have asked. It's basically your hot tip for standing out. Jay, you were specifically talking about the high volume and how do you filter through that. So for all of you, what is your hot tip for standing out? Nobody wants to give away their secret sauce.
I just saw someone's question in the chat, which I think plays to this. So I'm going to focus on that a little bit more, which is from outside my work at Folk on the Rocks. But I also work at another company called Victory Pool as an artist manager. And I do sponsorships with the artists that I work for there. And I like this question about, targeting specific sponsors to theme. The last bit of the question is, let's say my play is about orange juice. Do I contact Tropicana? Yes. I think that is actually really important. Figure out what it matches, what aligns. I work with an Indigenous artist who's sort of in the rock scene. So we have a really great partnership going with Cheekbone Beauty because that fits really well. They're very glamorous. So is she, it's a perfect fit. We wrote them, we kind of told the story, her story, and they said yes. So I do think finding those niches, which we do at the festival as well, despite me saying that it's big, we have a lot of special little intricacies that help funnel those partnerships. But yeah, find those things, those themes, and pair them together.
Derek or Jay, you have any final thoughts?
Eric, want me to let you go? I think that Derek doesn't want to sell his secret sauce.
No, no, no.
No, but that's fine. I understand if you have the magic
I've got-
recipe.
Honestly, my first thought was genuinely just be genuine and honest about what you're trying to do, especially your art, especially arts organizations. Like, I also give this a thought to people who ask me about grant writing. Like, yeah, you know, there are some preconceived ways to do it, and yes, of course, there are some social contracts and conventions that you have to stay within, but you know, I always find it more comfortable talking to sponsors when I give myself the permission to talk like an artist within reason and actually explain why this thing is so important to me and why I really want to do this thing. And you know, often it works out. That's my not so secret.
Yeah, it's ultimately about storytelling, right? Which is what artists do. So you're connecting with a sponsor, as Carly's saying, a specific story. They're connecting a glamorous artist with a beauty product, or telling a very specific story about your organization. So thank you so much to all of our panelists, Jay Hébert, Carly McFadden, and Derek Chan, for contributing your insightful experience and answering all the questions from our audience. And thank you to Alicia for your excellent moderating skills. It was so wonderful to have all of you with us today. A big thank you to Power Corporation of Canada, who is presenting partner of the Business and Arts Speaker Series. And since we touched on our Arts Fest program several times, I just want to reiterate the Arts Fest program offers ongoing training and mentorship for small and medium-sized arts organizations. For example, tomorrow we're holding an Ask Me Anything session with several Arts Fest mentors. So if you're interested in learning more about the program, to find out about eligibility to participate, or if you want to become a mentor yourself, you can visit our website, businessandarts.org/artsfest. And you can also visit our website for all of our programs and events, or you can follow us on social media. So many thanks, and wishing everybody a happy long weekend.